Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Of course, I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to this Tuesday. Tuesday's been a bit of a grab bag for this channel, uh, due in every part to be my own fault. Today is TV and movie to tabletop RPG Tuesday. Um, And of course, with our theme for this week is Entourage. Um, and in no small part, this has a lot to do with generally an entourage of individuals surrounding maybe our player characters and or our NPCs for our tabletop RPG games. But you can't dodge away from the fact that there is an American television show that aired here in the States known as Entourage. So I thought we would actually um, reference that specific show for this week for our subject. All right, so you don't need to have seen the show or even remember what it was about, but in no small part, it was about the drama and the goings on of a group of characters who live in and around Hollywood. And one of the main characters intends on uh, becoming an actor, an auteur, and have a career in Hollywood. And the show revolves around the extended cast around this individual, and a lot of times, the more exciting individuals happen to be the ones that surround the so-called main character. In many ways, the ensemble or the extended family of characters becomes the main characters, even though in world they may not be. Like Jarl DM says, by the way, guys, if you guys don't know this, you really should be following the Jarl DM online. Uh, you know, you may be unaware that the Jarl DM has actually written a Viking setting based in part on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So check that out, please. Please, please, please. Anyway, Jarl DM says, if you look at most animated adventure shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, She-Ra, etc., the main character has a big entourage of characters that help them. Oh, hell yes. The proliferation of like 80s cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons, which were really excuses to sell toys. Thundar the Barbarian, Black Star, Mask, uh, Herculoids, and anyway, it goes on and on and on because basically the cartoons got canceled when the periphery items stopped selling. Um, but yeah, they were basically like 15-minute to half hour commercials that we enjoyed watching, and they were always like an ensemble cast, Captain Planet, and so on. Heck, even you could even go towards the Dragon Ball Z, like Voltron, multi-pilot robot or robot pilot shows and whatnot, all from like Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Jarl DM says, by the way, the modern She-Ra and the Princess of Power is an amazing show. You know what? It's weird because it's and actually kind of cool that we've got like developers and writers now. Like I've heard, now I've listened to it, but I haven't seen it, that the new Harley Quinn animated show is not only like R rated, but it's absolutely brilliant. I've heard that too. So it's weird how there are like creators now that are taking these old, you know, uh, uh, dust covered intellectual properties and like taking them and going like, I'm gonna write my own thing here, and kind of like sneaking in, like being really sneaky about their creativity, and then having people like you like me flip past it, go nah, 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 and then you hear like 4, 5, 12 voices, 200 voices going, oh, you got to see this thing, and still, the back of the head is going, nah, I'm not going to watch that, and then you end up clicking it on, and you're like, what? And now I haven't seen She-Ra, the newest incarnation, but I have heard really great things about it. Yep, I mean those are great, like entourage heavy shows where you often get the what like Power Rangers, you have the mentor, and the mentor is like, hey, here's life's lesson, and oh, here's a mission, and then of course the characters go off and they all have their different personalities, and then sometimes a television show will focus on one member of that group. Maybe someone will focus on the wild member of the group who's trying to get their wild aggressions under control, and somebody else. The next episode might focus on the intellectual who we get to see their an expression of their emotions that we normally don't get to see, and so those are times where, much like getting pigeonholed with alignment in role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, it's the time where you get to see the lawful good paladin do the wrong thing for the right reason, or the rogue, or if you're old like me, the old thief who's used to committing crimes and backstabbing and all that kind of stuff, find out that that individual has a heart of gold for this person. DM's like, She-Ra is great in terms of representation, but is also really well written, focuses on themes of indoctrination. It's not really for kids in spite of being animated. Check it out, you won't regret it. Like, and plug. But no. It's funny how a very short animated, there are some writers that are brilliant in getting across an idea in a very short amount of time with very few words. I point out the long term series of Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Superman, that entire series of cartoons back to back to back. They were brilliant for that too. Short episodes, short and quick, dialogue, real snappy. Uh, Excellent. One of the, despite being animated, one of the best portrayals of Batman, which of course we know. If you guys, of course, don't know, that Warner Brothers / DC has dropped a bunch of trailers for the upcoming movies. Fingers crossed that they they make it to the theaters. Which the theaters here in Columbus, Ohio, have opened up, and I christened it by going to see the latest movie, Unhinged. Anyway, getting back to Squirrel. Okay, getting back to the point here, I thought we would take a ridiculous concept of the cast of characters from the television show Entourage and make them into like something dangerous, from our antagonists in like role playing games. All right, so the Entourage characters, and these are very easy roles to fill out. Okay, like I said, you don't need to watch the show, but um, in essence, you have a main character who's like, um, the main character is Vince, and Vince Chase is basically like, as I read from here, just so I don't stumble too much over my words, a pretty boy with the who we're told is a decent actor. Uh, he's essentially he's the head of the entourage. He's the one who is reasonably successful, living in Hollywood, who seems to float his way through the twists and turns of Hollywood, and in some ways happens to be like brilliant but lazy. Like, people tend to recognize his, they either recognize him for his acting ability and look past his great looks, or they see that he's a pretty boy and hire him for whatever role. And he seems to be like lucky, but not very proactive, because that's where the entourage comes in. Yeah. DMs is like Johnny Drama is the tank guardian, likely a barbarian. Yeah. Yeah. Your DM says the lawyer publicist guy, Ari Gold, is for sure the brains behind the operation, probably the actual big bad. And I think that's the I think that's the one cool thing we can pull out of like an entourage of characters. Like you very well might have an evil lich that's surrounded by these like what the evil lich considers to be the sycophantic kiss asses, but maybe, just maybe, there might be an old wizard or something, or like a vampire lord, or even hell, some kind of shape changed fiend or dragon or something that happens to be like sitting in the periphery that's always giving advice to the evil lich, and the PCs are like, oh well, killed the lich, got the phylactery, destroyed it, we're done. And come to find out, like, nah, you actually missed the really big bad. And you're like, really? Like, yeah, you killed the king, but you didn't kill the kingmaker. And so you start talking about Hollywood, like you got a lawyer publicist, you've got the main actor, you have the um aging but not quite successful actor who's best friends, like drama. You have you okay, let me get back into the characters. There's where is he? Turtle, who's basically like he's the epitome of the stereotypical, like, let's live just for now, right? Like, let's spend it all, let's do all the crazy things, we only have one life to live, let's go ahead and do the thing. And usually that's the character that kind of draws the players into it, the one who spends too much money, a little bit too loud, um, tries to embrace the stereotypes a little bit too much of like, if you have a goblinoid horde, they're the orc or bugbear that's really like living it up as the stereotypical, I'm a beast and I'm running around and I'm crazy. um, Maybe you have someone in the group that's far too emotional and needs a little bit too much like emotional support, and that maybe that character hangs out in the tavern a little bit too much, getting drunk or whatever, and has loose lips, or that there's a person who maybe is, when you start talking about Hollywood, perception makes reality. And so, mm, taking that into a tabletop role playing game, maybe someone is very sensitive about rumors about themselves and about the entire entourage. Like, what did you say about us? What hey, Bard, you better get the story right, or is somebody disrespecting us down in that town? We better go find out who they are, and we'll crack the knuckles and go ahead and start beating some ass, because no one talks about us like that. It's all about rep. Someone else might be, and then you have all the different motivations, right? Whether it's ego, money, prestige, power, and privilege. It could be intimidation, lording it over other people. There's some who just do it for the art. Like, I don't care about what other people say. I just want to casually, go about my life, and I don't really care about all of the parties and the influence and all that. I'm an artor, you know. I exist for the adventure of just traveling through the various planes of existence. I have no desire to acquire wealth, whatever, and other persons who are hanging along like, sure, you live your life like that. I'm getting some gold pieces and the first chance I get a portable hole or a bag of holding, I'm getting one, because I can't stuff enough gold in my pants, right? So there's lots of ways to do this, and mind you, the the ensemble cast, this entourage, they don't need to hang out all the time. I mean, sure, there the Entourage television show tended to have most um, of the characters in the same room, so they have interactions. But in our larger world, of course, you could have a reason for these other characters spreading out into the world. Maybe there is There is a Johnny Drama that's like the barbarian, and he's got his own hangers on that are like, yeah, I'm with you. And then the PCs get caught up in that, you know, pun intended drama of this one character that's part of a larger ensemble. And it might even surprise the PCs if there's like a goblinoid horde that's like terrorizing the countryside, and then some like rich noble or powerful mage or um, you know, debutante princess or something steps forward to calm this person down and save them from, you know, from the ass beating they might get from the PCs. And the PCs are scratching their head like, why would that noble family reach out to these? Like, why are they in league with each other? And then you come to find out maybe they grew up together, or they were all imprisoned, um, rightfully or you know, disingenuously, all imprisoned together, and that's their connection. You know, they all went through the same crucible. That kind of thing. Um, Now the Jarl DM says I run a lot of Game of Thrones games where the characters are the entourage of the Lord. They are pretty rarely in the same room, and mind you, you don't need to do this in role playing games, but a way to get around. We have technology today that lets us get around the idea of needing to have all of our characters in the same location, and that's cell phones. Now, going past cell phones, we have role playing games where we have like Magic and psionics and things like that. So, if you really want to get them in the same room, what you're really saying is you want them to interact with each other when one or more of them is in a state of choice. And so, a lot of times, like a cell phone, some kind of psychic connection, um, you know, astral projection, things like that, right? It's like your LDM says, you know, they're pretty rarely in the same room, but they're working towards the same goal. And that's basically a session zero, right? Not, well, it doesn't need to be, but Blades in the Dark is a perfect example of this, where the player characters are, you know, Blades in the Dark, the role playing game embraces the idea that the player characters are bad guys. They're evil. It's a criminalized heist neo-Victorian world, and all the characters, all the protagonists are the bad guys. They're thieves, assassins, backstabbers, intimidators, bribery, you know, beating people in the streets and whatnot, or breaking and entering and such. But they have a unified goal to get to, and that is taking care of their gang. And they even have a gang character sheet, worksheet, that all of the player characters can improve upon. So there is a reason for going out, doing like downtime activities. It's actually one of the most robust downtime activity role playing games I've ever seen, because there's a direct mechanical effect once the protagonists get back together again. So I would be surprised. I'm very surprised that other games haven't pulled on this thread of like having downtime activities that have a specific goal of improving the, you know, the action spotlight part of it. Like the wizard that wants to go out and starts questioning, going to the library to then come back into the main fold, who now has some kind of like benefit or something like that when casting a spell. Like, oh, I can cast this normally concentration spell. I can cast it without concentration now because I gained it from going to a wizard's conclave and talking to them and studying with them temporarily. But of course, now they get pulled in to the machinations of what's going on. Now, the other part of, because TV and movie to RPG Tuesday in the past has been Crunch Time Tuesday. There are some mechanical things that we can talk about in terms of an entourage. Like, for example, there, and I just now lost hold of it in my head. There is I'm going to reference a superhero game, and I cannot remember the name of it. And there is a White Wolf game called Wraith, an old game called Wraith the Oblivion. But the reason why I'm referencing this unnamed superhero game, is that they have a statistic in it called bonds. And in the White Wolf game, they have something called fetters. And the your bond or your fetters can be related to a person, place, or thing. And if they're related to a person or people, it's possible to tie, in other words, it's possible to tie your capabilities to an entourage of individuals that represents the main player character's capabilities. So, if I can get to the point, right, maybe your character has a high intimidation rank, but maybe the intimidation isn't you, but it's you surrounded by your entourage. Yeah, yeah, like Ismofa says, bonuses or abilities given to the main character when various entourage members are not present, or when they are present, right? Or some kind of like combination thereof. For example, Fate, the role playing game Fate works this way, where you you have a trait that gives you a benefit when based on your relationship to somebody else. So, like, okay, it's been a while with Fate, but like for example, you might have an aspect. They're called aspects. You might have an aspect that says, "I'm protective of my best friend Turtle," right? And so when your best friend Turtle is in trouble, maybe they get arrested or they fall down into a pit or they're being beat upon in a dark alley, you now have a benefit like a bonus to react or damage or dodge or whatever, because that's all of that combined together is basically how the role playing game works. Now you can activate your benefit because you are protective of your best friend Turtle. So now you are faster to get there, and you can beat people about the head and shoulders because of it. And so linking like bonuses or abilities to people who are there, or maybe like Ismofa says, who are not there, could be a way to. It's it's a little bit meta to think about it that way, because a lot of it has to deal. It's more creative and literary than it is simulationist, but I think it still works, where um, Dungeons and Dragons has hit upon this, where you could have a benefit where you're related, or you have some kind of connection to a twin, or a married individual, or maybe you and another player are in a bonded, like a military group, like you're bonded together, you're like blood brothers and sisters or something. Um, so attaching some of your capabilities to this larger entourage might be pretty effective. And even there are even like a noble backgrounds where you have a manservant, a valet, a midwife, or something of that nature, where you have an individual who acts on your behalf, and that individual could represent, like, sure, I'm not there, I've sent my manservant off to do this particular function for me, but really they're just an extension of myself, much like a wizard, or a naturalist with a pet that goes off and does a thing, sending a message or delivering something. It's the same thing with maybe another humanoid being that's in your league, that's allied with you. If you're a fifth level paladin or something, and you ask your squire to go ahead and perform a certain function, sure, they run off and they name drop when they go to the local blacksmith, like, oh, I'm the squire for, you know, Sir Golden of the bleached white outfit. And, Sir Golden of the bleached white outfit is like, oh, here, you're back here. Oh, you brought my sword and my extra cloak because I need another one that's bleached white, right? Um, those individuals might be the extended individuals of the group. Um, Game of Thrones had a really good thing with Brienne and Podrick, uh, as her re- reluctant. She was the reluctant teacher. He was the excited squire to learn everything he could from her, and of course, she got to beat ass and surprised by his behavior, but that was an extended group. Yarld's EM says inspire the the Azurite merchant priest has a bodyguard instead of weapons options. See, that's you can get a little bit you we could get a very meta when it comes to these kind of things, but it is possible to do it right. Like I've seen plenty of times where someone creates a character who's like the non-combatant coward, even though they might have very high statistics. They play the character as like fumbling through their life, who just so happens to be statistically successful in things, even though within the game world they aren't. Right? It's the bumbling fool that just so happens to find a hidden clue, not because they're smart, but because they're lucky, or they just happen to be a hanger on or something. Willow Packard, the storyteller, says, "Wouldn't want to get blood all over the bleached white outfit." Yeah, you don't want that. So how does he keep it so clean? Well, that's where your entourage comes in. And you know what? I haven't been able to figure out how an adventurer can go on any kind of adventure with like bleached white outfits at all, but they happen to be a trope, aren't isn't it? Your LDM says, I just love the idea that your weapon is all descriptive anyway. So why not have your weapon be a servant or a bodyguard? Exactly. Like, it it very well could be that you're the I don't know, you're the young noble prince or whatever, and your bodyguard, like let's say you're playing air quotes a fighter, but you're playing a character who has very little skills, but your bodyguard represents your abilities, and your bodyguard's the one stepping in front of you to take the brunt of the attack, or pushing you back away from the ogre, and your bodyguard's doing all the fighting, and then of course you step forward and you're like, all embarrassed because you can't fight, but your bodyguard's doing it. It's all numbers anyway, and description, right? I roll dice to achieve a success or failure. Do I succeed? Do I fail? Are we using yes and no but? All of that kind of stuff. Yeah, of course it means you could have a bodyguard, or some sort of like surrounded by enough sycophants that represent, like, who's to say your hit points aren't your hit points, but they represent the veritable army of individuals that are hanging around you. Like, going back to the Hollywood thing, there are people who are surrounded by an assistant, a body person who handles all of your fashion. You have someone that does your hair and or your makeup. You have paparazzi that might be hanging around. Maybe you have one or half a dozen friends who are always like, yeah, we're on your side, but really what they want to do is just go partying and spend some of your money. You have publicists. There are, maybe there's someone writing your memoirs who's hanging around you doing that as well. Uh, Other actor friends who come and go. All of these things, maybe a real hired bodyguard to protect you from all the other individuals that are hanging around you. And all of that could be happening, but really you just have one character sheet in front of you. And I think that's an awesome thing to do. You know, describing your +2 ability to persuade is, just represented by the group of fans that are hanging around you that happen to be banging on the window outside when they see you pass by, and they're screaming and they love you, whatnot. And then everyone else is like, "Oh, should I like this person? Wait, who's here? Wait, what's going on?" So when you go to get your hotel room and the hotel manager looks up and sees that you are surrounded, you seem to be some famous person, then the hotel manager's like, "Sure, I'll give you a discount. I'll give you the penthouse suite, because we want you to stay here with us, right? We don't want you to be upset." And as the hotel gets a lot more attention when the news gets there or something like that. And that's like in a modern context. heck, there are even character class options where you're surrounded by like your ancestors or ghosts and things if you want to go a little bit more um, arcane, uh, or much like, of course, there's lots of people that love playing the warlock classes, but it doesn't need to be. You don't need to default to that in a mechanical sense. Like why wouldn't your fighter be surrounded by other warriors to go into battle, like Achilles and the Myrmidon or something? Maybe they each represent at least 5 of your hit points, and you're like, I've got 85 hit points. 45 of those are soldiers that are loyal to me that might defend me / fall in battle, and I've got 3 attacks per round, so 2 of those are from me. One of them happens to just be one of my entourage swinging at an enemy or something like that. I mean, I would go for it. I really don't have a problem with it. Yeah, like your all DM says, like that's how I do big battles. A unit of 20 um Huskarls is just one Huskarl stat block, for example. Oh yeah, yeah. Listen, it in air quotes, it makes sense to roll for 87 different attacks. Don't do it at the table. Just make them one giant unit of individuals, and um, you can hack off pieces of the entire unit, or as the game master, dungeon master, you can break those units off into smaller pieces when you want to start like zeroing in, magnifying into the smaller battles, as opposed to keeping track of 287 different die rolls. Featherfall says, I honestly don't know why 5e removed ability damage. Sure, you have shadows and mind flayers, but that's not really what I'm looking for. Ability damage really upped the stakes, and I like that. Oh, you mean like actual ability score damage? Oh, I'm down for that. Like losses of strength or intelligence, um, uh, or losses of capabilities. Like my fighter lost their second wind ability or something like that. Like actual capabilities and losing those as well. I'm Unfortunately, when you only have one, you're only using and you only have one metric of loss, then it's very easy to only measure wins and losses through that one metric, right? Yeah, yeah, and like Featherfall says, Constitution damage is really neat, as it also technically damages your hit points. I've often wondered why they didn't. Well, I get it, but like making hit points more stress or luck or endurance, and Constitution is like actual impalement, bleeding, broken bones, or something of that nature, right? Because Constitution really doesn't increase very much at the same rate as hit points, which, like in the cinematic environments, we have an option where you can just take falling damage. It does straight Constitution damage because you know falling 500 feet doesn't make sense that you can get up and walk away from it. Um, although the rules say you do fall prone, but whatever the case may be, falling damage, getting burned, sure, you can learn how to fight better, but you can't learn how to like fall better to an extent, right? There's an upper limit of terminal velocity that's like, yeah, that's, a tumble roll's not going to save you, you know. Um, Jarl DM says, you can just describe the chaos of the battle, use the environment to give the impression of it, but actually do a normal sized combat for your own sanity. Yeah, yeah, for your own sanity. Just use the standard rules and then just extrapolate out what the hell's going on, like you talked about with the greater battle. And mind you, you can just use the PCs can use their die rolls to describe the success and failure of let's say they're in control of a larger unit of individuals. So instead of rolling for every member of the cadre, you just say, all right, you're making your attack rolls. here's how many successes and failures you've gotten, right? you know, and just describe it that way. And even as role players, I've played with people who have described their success as barely getting by and their failures as failing forward without changing the aspect of the die rolls themselves, right? Like, um, you know, maybe you rolled a 17 to attack your enemy, and you describe it as like, I push forward but I stumble into the mud, and just before my enemy gets to swing on me, one of the members of my cadre comes over and blocks the sword, giving me enough time to step forward. I grab the broken spear off the ground and shove it into the chest of my enemy or something, right? You is that just a I make a die roll and attack? Yeah, of course that is. But we can describe anything the way we want to, without actually changing not a single rule. You know, we can be creative. We don't have to stop our creativity um, at the moment we pick up dice. It doesn't necessarily need to be one die roll per one hit. It could just be. It's like it's music. It's the jazz that's within the overriding beat, so that everyone is on the same beat, but everyone's doing their jazz riffs. Um, Featherfall says it, which I agree with you. It also makes having odd numbered stats more useful. I've often thought about that fact. Like, what's well, there really is no need to have 3 to 18 stats because you never ever reference them ever again in the game. Sure, I said it. There's no reason to have a 13 strength because the number 13 never comes up again. There are some OSR games where it's you all either roll 3d6 or d20, and you need to get below your stat. But other than that, there's no reason to have stats numbered 3 to 18 because all you're doing is taking that number to find another number, which is a modifier, which is why like ICRPG only uses modifiers, which is yeah, it's yeah. Think about it. Willow Packard, the storyteller, says, I will say exhaustion is a good thing to substitute out for ability damage. Yeah, exhaustion for some players and game masters are scared of exhaustion because it's basically a 6 point insta death system, and exhaustion is pretty painful and pretty debilitating. Which I'm like, yeah, because that's what it's for. In the cinematic environments, we have mental exhaustion called despair, which runs along the same 6 point path that actually it's more than 6 points, but it's basically six levels of despair, and on each of those levels you have an option. Like the first three levels you have two options, and you move up and down based on your mental state, which is it's a more subtle version of insanity, to make an insanity check, but it's the same thing. And yeah, exhaustion is a great thing to use as a condition for like failure to do something, or you engage in a large battle and whatnot. Because exhaustion, because it's a 6 point loss system. Because if you get to six levels of exhaustion, you pass out and start dying. It what is my brain trying to say? It first level or 20th level, it ranks up higher with the player character choices. You know what I mean? It's not something that goes away after like 12th level and means nothing anymore. Um, so another thing that you can use a substitute in for like an entourage around a player character, since we're talking about player character options, is to the ensemble cast around the player character could represent the player character's capabilities, making it necessary to keep those individuals around. Um, in Wraith the Oblivion, you play a wraith, a ghost, and you have things known as fetters. And in the superhero game, and the superhero game has it's a phrase. Oh, I can't think of the phrase. Anyway, it's a powered by the apocalypse game. But anyway, the in that you have bonds, and your superhero is more successful based on the number of bonds you have. And so, but on the other hand, you could become a very powerful superhero if you have less bonds. You can spend your bonds. So, like, if you want to be a Silver Surfer, Superman, you want to be like one of these top ranked superheroes, you have very few bonds. But if you want to be a street level character, you have very many bonds. And the bonds act like fate points, hero points, inspiration, moxie. What are some other things? Fate, whatever. Okay, they're points to allow you to have certain successes. So it's the reason why, like a Batman in a superhero game, it can be as successful or as effective as a Superman in the same world because they have a number of bonds. Like Batman's got like Commissioner Gordon. He's usually has a girlfriend hangers, one or more girlfriends hangers on. He's got like some kind of femme fatale that's hanging around him. He also has a sidekick and so on and so forth. He's got Alfred and whatnot. And so you can spend the bond and to gain some kind of like um, die roll bonus. But bonds and like in Wraith the Oblivion, you are attached to the living world because of a person, place, or thing. So you need to protect those bonds and those fetters from harm. So you may have died, but you have a loved one who's still around. That loved one might feel a cold chill up their spine as you slip into the car. They drive away and they're sad, and they have your picture hanging from the rear view mirror and whatnot, and they start crying for no reason because you're sitting next to them because you are a ghost. Well, you want to protect them so they don't get in a car accident, or they're going to a job interview and you want to, you know, the person that's interviewing them, you are a ghost and you realize that they really don't like this person, but you want your loved one to get a job. So maybe you do something to something happens so that they get the job or whatever. Like maybe they go in for IT job and you cause a computer failure, and then they're sitting right there and they solve the computer problem and you're like, ooh, solve that. You're it's it could be used as a um, character capability economy, right? You spend the abilities. So you use your abilities, right? You've got magic, you've got powers, you've got psionics, you've got something. You spend those abilities. Now to recoup those abilities and engage in the economy, you now have to engage with your entourage, your ensemble, to get those back. So maybe there is maybe you haven't been home in a while. You've got to go back to your mom and dad, and they represent one or more of your capabilities, like your hit points or something. Like maybe your hit dice are tied to these individuals, and so you've got 7 hit dice. 3 are attached to your military commander. You've got 1 attached to a younger sister. You've got 2 more attached to, I don't know, the city guard who left the fold or whatever. Like you may have that kind of thing attached to these individuals. Hey, you want to get your 3 hit dice back? You better get back home to mom and dad, right? Even though you left the family farm, Or hey, I only have 1 hit dice attached to an on again, off again relationship. So you go to meet your partner, and you're having it out with your partner who wants you to quit this military um, mission or something, and they want you to stay home. And you're like, I can't, and then maybe you get those hit dice back or something. And that mechanically, that's how you explain it. But in world, you do it. And um, again, this unnamed superhero game, if you expend all of your bonds, you lose connection with everything that is humanity because, of course, you're a superhero. You're trying to save humanity, and once you lose that, your character leaves the game. Your character dies. Your character gets killed. Your character loses their powers. Your character gets called off to another dimension. Your character loses their magic hammer. They lose the will to. They retire, and they want to stay with their loved one. They become injured and are unfunctioning, right? You get removed out of the world for whatever reason. And so the same could be said for mechanically for this as well. Also, when it comes to like an ensemble or an entourage, um, yeah, Deadman says, or like with Exalted, an entourage functions like a suit of bonus hit points. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I was writing notes. I'm always writing notes. The One of the cinematic environments we're going to end up writing is battlefields, and in it we were talking about the idea of having like the bonus hit points acting as a cadre of lost soldiers that you find along the way, and they gather around you because of um, your military brilliance and hell, just just out of fear, and so they become like meat shields as they surround you, and of course cause lots of drama as you see these. Whoa, sorry, as you see the young faces get killed off one by one, and you get to fall to your knees and scream to the heavens that no, Johnny's dead, no, you get to do that a little bit. There's a role-playing game called HCAT. It stands for Hong Kong Action Theater, and all the character capabilities are based on the meta version of like Hong Kong action. And like for example, you can have a special ability called overdubbing. Um, there's all kinds of other things in there, but one of them that I find hilarious is called the sacrificial buddy. And the sacrificial buddy basically it is literally extra hit points that you get where you can sacrifice your sacrificial buddy who happens to take the hit that should take you out, but you get it's like sundering a shield, right? It's the Johnny's dead, no, and then of course the next game, of course, you have another Johnny that's hanging around, and they're like, hey, yeah, yeah, Feng Shui does the same thing. I've still had my Feng Shui. I don't have my HCAT anymore, but yeah, I don't have a Hong Kong Action Theater. Hong Kong Action Theater is far more meta than Feng Shui, but even Feng Shui has rules in it where it's like where uh, they have abilities like Carnival of Carnage and things of that nature. Yeah, Feng Shui has the sacrificial buddy concept, but I can't remember what it's called in that game. Yeah, but thank you there, Ismufa. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think now, mind you, you can get a little bit too into the weeds or you have a player who wants to abuse the ability, like, oh, um, the only reason I have my fighter has second wind is not my character getting a second wind. My character's exhausted, but one of my entourage runs up and attacks my enemy for me, and that's how I describe it. You can get a player that wants to abuse it and like, oh, so I have this extra person hanging around. Why can't they do these other things for me? And you as a dungeon master, like fold your arms. You're going like, listen, this is just narrative. Sure, this person can run off and maybe get you some stale bread and a you know onion soup, but they're not acting as literally another player character, right? Although there are role playing games that do this. For example, um, there's a classic role playing game called Ars Magica, and in Ars Magica they call it troop style role playing, and they specifically have three power levels of characters. So it's based in a fictional world of Europe where there is this conflict between the Arcana, faith, and science. And the player characters, the main protagonists, are magi, and below them are these less powerful people known as custos. And the custos are like skilled warriors or knowledgeable sages or something. They are above your standard individuals, but they're below the magi. They don't have magical powers. Although a custos could be gifted with something, like a custos could be someone who was bitten by a wolf and somehow has like lupine features, or it can like has heightened smell. Like they basically have like one simple ability. And then you below them you have the grogs, and grogs are like common folk. They are servants. They're simple warriors. They are cooks. They are scouts. They they're cannon fodder. And the idea of playing Ars Magica is like let's say you have three players at the table. One player could play a mage, the second player could play two custos, and the third player could play like three or four grogs. And the idea is you play this extended family of magi leaving their hidden um, covenant. They call them covenants instead of covens, but they leave their thing and go out adventuring and gathering materials and going on and whatnot, confronting the church and confronting people are trying to bring about science, and you of course your characters are part of magic. And so I think this is a great way, especially if you have like an unresolved time and date of playing characters. Like let's say and this is an example how I would use, say, playing a game of Isklof, right? Where you have a number of Vikings, whatever, and you have a number of players who want to play, but they can't all show up. So let's say they're all playing fifth level. Maybe you allow another player who says, like, hey, can I make 5 levels of characters and play in this game? And you go, sure. All right, and all right, well, I'll make 1 third level character and then 2 first level characters and travel with them. And maybe other people could play them like you would play a wizard's familiar or their pet or something. Or, hey, I can't be in a game all the time. Can I just handle like 5 first level characters? And, the Dungeon Master's like, you do realize this is like a 5th level game. Like, oh no, I know they're going to get killed off. It's no big deal. But I just want to be part of the game and I can't show up all the time. Or, you hand out the NPCs like, yeah, like your alt DM says, yeah, that'd be cool. You could fill out a full longship crew that way. Yeah, and maybe some of the characters, maybe some people get attached to them as like these randomized NPCs, and you could even make it like a running joke where the the cook who really shouldn't be surviving, like the quartermaster or something, who shouldn't survive at all, happens to keep surviving, and like maybe it becomes the running joke. Or maybe there's a character that keeps getting picked up randomly whose personality keeps changing because a different player finds them, but that becomes that character's like personality that you never know how they're going to act when you see them. Or there's a character whose facial hair keeps changing and no one knows why. Or like you could be ridiculous and then have a little bit of like comedy relief in it. Or it might be very effective, like right, like when maybe it's not about you killing the enemy and the enemy killing you per se, but maybe some of the crew gets kidnapped or captured, or they become stuck behind enemy lines, or they get lost out there in the wild, and you really need to bring the crew back to the long ship to get the hell out of there because you've gotten your ill-gotten gains. But it's not just about you as a player character, it's you and everybody else that's part of the entourage. Long ships, spacecraft, wagon trains, anything that requires more individuals than the player characters really works well in this kind of concept. That, yeah, we're walking across the desolate landscape, but we need at least there's 25 of us, but we need at least 10 of us to get the wagon trains across the desolate landscape. And it's not about us fighting the bad guy. It's about us defending our non-combatants or very, very poor combatants to ensure that they survive so that we can successfully get across the desolate landscape in our wagon train, right? Ismofa, yep, Star Trek. Anyway, Ismofa says, I ran a Star Trek game using Savage Worlds where I made 40 plus NPCs for the players to use on away missions or other scenes where not all the main characters would logically be present. They got attached to some of the NPCs. That's an easy way to get your players attached to them. Just say, here you go, here's some NPCs. You handle them, right? They know they're not as capable as you, but they have personalities. Give them some life. And like you said, you get 40 plus NPCs. And you know what? Let's not do all the hard work ourselves there, Inzmofa. Let's let the players do it, right? Hey guys, come up with 5 names, 5 physical traits, 5 personality traits or quirks, you know, 5 functions, and boom, you've got 3 players. They all come up with 5. Now you've got 15 NPCs that you get to use, and they could be attached to them because they created them. And then they might even have like some fun with it, like, oh, this person and this person have a relationship on the ship that they're trying to hide, or this person has a black market connection and is always sneaking like booze or something onto the ship, or this NPC is very superstitious and won't go into dark caves, even though we've got to yet another island with an ancient crypt on it or something like that. And here's another mechanical thing that I thought about doing. I've used this far in the past, but I haven't done it recently. When the players acquire new things, we can just make them individuals. So instead of gaining inspiration, maybe that inspiration is part of the ensemble, the entourage. So a player character could be a noble, and one of their lackeys speaks to them in their ear, which gives them advantage on their history check, right? Because when you spend inspiration, you get advantage on it. Or the player character pulls out their rapier and their dirk, and they're fighting in a battle with someone, and they get pushed back on their heels, and their loyal servant or something comes up and throws them a buckler shield or a cloak or something like that, because they drop their dirk and they end up using that, and then they use the cloak to make their opponent trip and fall, and they stab them in the throat. They're like, thanks for that, which could just be inspiration. How about one of the ensemble acting as a temporary or um, um, acting as a magic item or a boon of some sort or a spell, like, oh, my arcane knight doesn't have any spells. My spells are my extended family of servants and squires and things like that. Like, I'm going to use a shield spell. Well, is it really a spell? No, I'm describing it as I'm behind my shield wall, or I'm a Spartan, and that's another one of my men who comes up and protects me with a shield. Or heck, it might be just a shield maiden, and she comes up and pulls her shield up because of I cast my shield spell, and it acts the same way, but it becomes an individual. Maybe there's the idea of like handing out temporary items, like, oh, you don't really want to hand out more magic items in your game, and you really want to, this is like a low fantasy kind of thing, but you really don't want to change the rules as well, because you're like, no, because they're having fun, just reskin them as individuals, right? Like, instead of I'm trying to think of something like a really weird magic item or something. Instead of a wand of magic missiles, you have an archer with you, I guess, right? And the archer just like fires a couple of like crossbow bolts over your shoulder at some of your enemy, and that's you. That they represent like a magic wand of magic missile. I know magic missiles do force damage. Relax. But that's the point, right? Like, they could represent like a laying on of hands, or you know stabilizing you when you drop to 0 hit points, or my barbarian is in battle, and instead of me going into rage, I'm just surrounded by other. Let's go with the Viking theme, since we're talking about Isklof, right? Those. It's not my rage that's doing the more damage and allowing me to I'm suffering. I have resistance against like bludgeoning and piercing damage. It's just me surrounded by a bunch of other blue and white faced painted comrades that are jumping in the battle and whatnot. Like I don't have the ability to jump 20 feet in the air, but my entourage behind me can lift me up to climb over that wall, i.e., they're giving me a boost over the wall. That's why I can jump 20 feet in the air. That's why I can scale 20 feet or something. Heck, you could even describe this as a Misty Step ability where you're in battle with someone. That person loses you in the battle because in the chaos they lose you in a fight, and then all of a sudden you appear somewhere behind a burning siege tower or something like that. Like, you didn't really teleport, but that's how we're using it in the game. You just happen to get lost in the chaos of the battle, and the enemy ogres are like looking around for you, and then all of a sudden you come out from behind the siege tower or something like that. My entangle or web spell is just a bunch of people throwing a net over you or something. So, but that's just taking it further and further out beyond what it is. But those are some mechanical aspects. Of course, we're going to talk about this absolutely moving forward. Tomorrow's World Building Wednesday, where we're going to build a world where an entourage, an ensemble cast around the antagonists and protagonists means something. As a hint, this was brought up by, of all people, Matt Colville, and we're going to talk about king making. yeah, Jarl. Thanks for stopping by, dude. And by the way, maybe I'll give you moderator status. Don't be afraid to to drop a link or something like that. Let's see if I can do this right now. There you go, dude. So on YouTube, you can drop in a link or something like that, like if you want to, or it references up or whatever. So don't be afraid to do that. And you could also drop in other links. So I'll pop you. There it is. Oh, unlimited power. Wow, that's a quick abuse. All right, flag, individual, report. I'm just messing with you, man. Anyway, we are coming to the end here, guys. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it as I awkwardly bring our show to the end. So we have to have our outro music come up and swell up. By the way, guys, if you want to support the channel, please like, share, subscribe, follow over on Twitch. Spread the word if you like this long-form content. Yeah, I might not be the best and brightest, but I'm always here. So, yeah, Monday through Friday. Anyway, guys, thank you very much, and have a great day. I will see you later. Thank you for watching.